Welcome to the Brookhill podcast, the Life, Legacy, and Leadership podcast. Today's guest is you guys are not ready. This one's going to break the internet right here. This is the Geary Perry right here. Yeah. Look at that. The audience loves him already.
Wow.
Geary is the GOAT, and just to kind of let you know his Brookhill pedigree, and then we'll let Geary talk about where he's at and what he's doing. But Geary is, Geary, you're the original camp driver. He's like Hetty, Tim, you. Is that right?
Well, it was Hetty, Jim Pennington.
Okay.
Bo Jones did it for
I didn't
just a
know
little
Bo
bit.
did that.
Yep. And then Tim, and then I came in after Tim.
Okay, so it went Hetty,
Yep.
Jim Pennington, Bo Jones, Tim Brooks,
and then me.
then you,
Yeah.
and then Ricky Allen was somewhere.
Ricky Allen did with me, and I don't know. He was more of co-camp director, assistant camp director is what he was.
Okay.
I don't know if he ran it on his own.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think his last year was 85.
Okay.
And I finished in 87.
Okay. Well, we're going to have Ricky on and talking to all those guys. And just for everybody to know, we're recording this just after the Legacy dinner that we had.
Amazing.
Was that?
I mean, if you weren't there, you missed an event, a historical event, really. So it was a combination of just the old and the new, and just seeing everybody. It was just so – I hadn't been here in 21 years.
Wow.
So to come here and see just the changes, what you guys have done, I mean, that's epic. What you guys have done with the place is just incredible. And I don't know if that's because Don Brooks is not around and he let the checkbook open up a little bit more. He would always say, we're not building kitchen cabinets, you know. And so we weren't trying to do the finest stuff. We were just doing stuff to make it work. And we did a great job with all that. So.
Absolutely. We wouldn't be here today.
Exactly.
If it wasn't for Don.
Yeah.
Because we know Hetty would have opened up the checkbook if Don hadn't said, all right, now, whoa,
Yeah, we had a few of those moments where Don would be doing and Hetty would go, now, Don, we're not going to do that. we got to take care of some things here, honey. You know?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Which, if people haven't heard Hetty's podcast on here and her telling the story of how it started, you have to go back and listen to that.
Yeah.
The miracles of, how they got the bus and how they built Big Lake. I mean, her and Dawn, it was just is unbelievable. And so I loved the Legacy dinner this last weekend.
Yeah.
Get to honor her. And, of course, what you talked about, Geary, I don't even know if you remember what you shared, but it was so powerful. Can you remember even what you shared a couple nights ago?
Yeah, I mean, the bulk of it was I was getting around to what Mim had taught us. And so there was really two parts of that. And I used the passage where the Pharisees came to Jesus and said, hey, what's the most important commandment in the law and the prophets in the Old Testament? And he said, love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and mind. But he didn't stop there. He said the next one is equally as important, and it's to love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus, those two principles, he said you could sum the whole Old Testament, even the New Testament, everything. Love God, love people. And so Mim taught us that principle of loving God and what that was, and what those things meant. But then she transferred that to out in loving campers and loving staff. And the other part of that is that how do you show love? And the scripture, greater love hath no man than he laid down his life for his friend. And that's what she did. She taught us servanthood. She taught us to serve. And so that's what we did at camp, is that we learned to serve the kids. We learned to serve each other. We learned that the way to the top was to be the least. And that was a great lesson to learn. And if you didn't know how to die to your flesh, you were in trouble.
You were about to learn.
You weren't going to make it, man.
Right.
Yeah. So, and one of the things I do remember is at camp, she always said camp's about the kids. And so for 3rd through 9th grade, the focus was on you. But then when you became a JC or a staff leadership, the focus was no longer on you, but it was on the kids. And that's a transition. And there's a lot of campers that had a hard time making that transition. Not everybody can. And it's a lesson that you've got to learn. So, but that's what she laid down for us, is she showed us who God was. and then she showed us how to love people, and that just spoke the world to me. And everything that she did was transferable, and she laid this foundation of this is how you really live life. Here's kingdom heaven on earth, those principles.
It's so good. It's so good to hear you say that, because I feel like I'm listening to her in staff training when I was a counselor. So it's interesting to hear you say that that's who she's always been. That's the way it's always been. So, camp started in 1964. When did you get here? How did you get here? And what was your era? You were into the 80s, but when did you start?
I started in I got saved when I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
And I came to Christian Ministries. My family came here back in the 70s when it was the Pavilion and only half of the Pavilion. So when you walked in,
I didn't know that.
half of the Pavilion was there, and the stage was at the back of the dining hall right there. And so that's where we had church. And I got saved there. So my youth pastor at the time was Bob Mace and Ken Eichler.
Okay.
And those two guys worked on my brother and I, because we came here. We loved coming to church. We got to play ping pong. We got to play foosball. We got to play hoops, go out in miniature golf. We had no concern about following God at that time. My parents did. But those guys led us. And I finally met some guys that really had something. Not just guys that I hung out with, were one way at church, and then at school we were a different way. I met some guys that had something inside. And I just said, man, I got to look into that more often. Deeper. And so I got saved my junior year. I gave my life to the Lord, and it was total everything, 100%. And so then I started coming to youth group, and after the end of my junior year, I got invited to come to camp. And so I came not knowing it was going to be all summer, but it was kind of that commitment for me as I was going to do whatever I need. Now, it interfered with my high school sport. I was a tennis player.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I was, I had trophies. I had scholarships to go. I had camps that wanted me to come and play and then go on to college. And I knew I wanted to do this, man. I got hung. I got caught, with Jesus. So once I got into camp, so that was my junior year, which is 1975, and I did all summer then. And then I came back my senior year after I graduated high school and did all 76. So I did all the way front to back in those 2 years.
So 75, 76, you were in AC. So, that's 11 years. Camp's been going just 11 years. That's young.
Yeah.
That's how many campers are here at that time?
Oh, man, I don't know. It had to have been close to 200. I don't know if it broke that yet.
Okay.
I think by the time I got...
that's total, every session.
Every
how many
session.
sessions did they have?
They did, what we did back then was we did a 1 week, a 2 week session off, 1 week, 2 week off, 1 week, 2 week.
Okay.
So that's what we did. We did, we had 3 1 weeks and 3 2 week sessions.
Okay.
I loved the 2 week sessions,
Yeah.
man. So cool. But I loved them all.
Okay.
And back then we did, as a counselor, you did 4 activities.
Okay.
You didn't have an activity off. And so you did that. And then our only time off was story time. And we prayed to God that Mim would show up. She didn't always show up.
Really? Even then she didn't always show up?
She didn't always show up for story time. And we'd have to carry that a bit. And and then the other thing is that, back then you did 4 activities, plus there was other ranch chores that we did. So it was a lot of work. Back then we had the pavilion was all the way full when I started working, from both sides, the full length, and chairs were upstairs. And so we had to set up chairs. And during the summer, we had church up here.
Oh,
during camp. So in the 2 week sessions, those 3, we would set up chairs, have church. The church people would come in with the camp people, and we had church, and then they would go on, and we'd stay and do. And then we'd set up all the chairs, put them down. So if it was show night, we set up the chairs, put it down. So everything was up and down. We did all that work. Then the other thing is
and
that,
how many of you is doing this?
I don't know. There was probably, 15 of us, as far as, because it was just the JCs.
Okay, so that's the JCs, ACs. You know,
Yeah.
you'd probably consider it AC,
Yeah.
JCs. Okay,
Yeah.
15 ACs, JCs, guys and girls.
Yeah, guys and girls.
That's it. 15
Yeah,
ACs and JCs,
yeah,
guys and girls doing all the work. And I know it's scaled. I know you have less campers at this
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
So if you're saying 200 in the summer, 200 whole summer.
yeah.
So how many? You're looking at about 30 campers per camp session, maybe.
No, that's about 200 a session.
A session.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
I think we had 12 bunkhouses altogether.
okay, so
at
that's
the- at the
1,200 kids a summer then. Okay,
Yeah,
that's large 10, 11 years
Yeah,
in.
it had grown. It had grown,
Wow.
and so it was taking off and going.
Wow.
And we had a big crew that was Little Rock. The Little Rock crew came and do, and that was Ricky Allen, the Sanders sisters. There was just so many over there. Cato came from that group and everything. So, but that was cool. But then the other thing was we baled hay.
Okay, so y'all are farmers as
I
well
baled
as
hay.
counselors. Okay.
So I'd work my activities, and then by the time we got done, the hay was baled in the field, and so I'd go down and we'd load it on the wagons.
Wow.
And Rodney would drive the tractor,
Okay.
and we'd come around and we'd load it up in the barn, and we'd work there till 10 o'clock at night, loading hay, come back, and then go to bed, get up, do activities and everything, regular program. And the next day, Big Mothersfield down the road, we would go down there, bale the hay down there, bring it up, put it in the barn, and do that process again. And so it may take us 3 days, something like that, but that's what we do.
Wow.
There was only a couple of us that did that. So
Okay, so this wasn't all the JCs
No.
that got the ranch work. That was
No.
maybe you and some of the ones who were all
Benny
summer.
Beck, and there was a couple other guys, some ranch hands, but
Okay.
we were the ones, doing that. So it was a
Okay.
little different back then.
Yeah. How old would Rod have been at that time if he's
Gosh,
running the
man.
tractor in 70,
He'd probably been 13, 14, somewhere right in there. Rodney was John Jr., man. Don
Okay.
Jr. just doing it all.
he's
Yeah.
just going wide
Go-
open.
wide open, man. Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
I love that. All right, 200 kids a session, 6 sessions. You got about 15 JCs. You said 12 bunkhouses. So that means you got a senior counselor in each bunkhouse.
Right.
Okay.
Senior and
maybe
junior, and that
A
was
senior
it.
and junior, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all the help.
Yep.
And then you got maybe Rod helping with the ranch work, Don with the ranch work. You have a cook. Is both Big Mother the cook still then?
No, not at that time. We
Okay.
had another gal that was in the church that cooked for a while, and then Mark and Andre Owens. Andre was my cook for several years.
Okay.
That came up through Christian Ministries, went to CMA,
Okay.
and came up here and started. She was helper and then became the head cook.
Okay.
Doing that, and that was fun. She did a great job. Mark stole her from camp. He was my buddy from Waco, and
That's Mark Owens, right?
Mark Owens.
Okay, I've heard
got
that name before.
Got a great one, man.
Okay.
Those two, awesome. So that was back. That was back when I was a camp director then. So then after I was an AC, I went to college to go to engineering school and got my degree and finished up. We went year round, and then I came back in 1980.
Okay.
And I came and worked under Tim as the assistant camp director for the first summer. And at that time, I had a job in Little Rock with an aerospace company. So I was going to do camp, and then I was going to leave and go to the job. And about halfway through the summer, I just knew God spoke in my heart. I was to stay. This was where I was going to be.
Wow.
And so I said, well, God, if you're going to do that, you got to do a couple things. And I laid out one of those things, and I said, one of the things is that you're going to have to take this job away. I'm not going to quit this job. And it was within a week, they called me up out of the blue and withdrew the offer for me to come work for them.
Wow.
And so it was just, I knew it was God. And
Right.
so that's where I just stayed, and I planted, and I was there till 1987.
So from 1980 to 1987, you went from assistant camp director to camp director, and you're running this.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I running it, and back in the day, it transitioned to where I did all the bunkhouse schedules, I did all the activity schedules, and then I ran all the kitchen.
Wow.
So I ordered the food, all the meals, and all that stuff, and then I blew the whistle,
Okay.
And then I had guys helping, Ricky Allen, John Thomas helped. He blew the whistle, ran the schedule.
Were they running bunkhouses, or were they full on outside the bunkhouse helping you?
Outside, full on outside.
Wow. Okay, so you had a
Yeah.
couple assistant camp directors here.
Yep. Yeah. I
Okay.
did. Had some great help, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, the Ricky Allen, John Tom. I mean, that's that's legacy right there.
It really is, man. It really is.
So you're doing Mary and Sam, and
Yeah.
so where did that come from? Were you the original Mary and Sam?
No. Tim was before me, and there was, I think, someone else before him. I don't know if it was Tom Irwin or some. I don't know who did.
Well, it seems like a Tom Irwin to come up. Tim could have come up with that too. He's very creative.
Yeah, very much so. I don't know where that originated, but it'd been going on since I'd been here.
Okay.
And so then when Tim stopped doing it, I didn't feel like I could be Mary and Sam.
That's funny that you say that. We were in the car. I don't remember who it was, Simon or Kevin. They call you the original Mary and Sam, and John and Brian are just kind of making it up.
Right.
They're copying, but they see you as the believable. Isn't that funny how we all see our heroes and the ones who did it originally? We're like, that's the original. You're copying.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't feel like I could be Mary and Sam, so I did this Homer Hatfield guy.
Okay.
And so then when John and I started doing Mary and Sam again, it was the Hatfield and McCoys.
Okay.
And we were battling back and forth, and we did this whole thing. Through the ceremony, we kind of split the lines and did the whole thing. So, and that was fun. We had, one of them come out of the bushes and the other one somewhere, so it was fun.
Well, for those who don't know, and I think we got to explain this because, gosh, Mary and Sam ended around late 90s. Do you even know? You never saw none of you. See, neither one of these guys in here that know what Mary and Sam is. And so this was a Thursday night. Was it Thursday night even in your day? This was a Thursday night pre-crucifixion. This was kind of the fun, and then crucifixion was the night ministry.
Yeah. And starting off, we didn't have crucifixion.
Okay.
So crucifixion came on my watch at some point.
It was your idea?
No, it wasn't my idea, but it came, and we were just like, we can do that.
Okay.
We can do a crucifixion. So
interesting. So
back up to, we'd take the wagons and go down the hill in the field and do the Mary and Sam. So we do the dead barbecue beef,
Yep.
And then
tug of war still?
Tug of war was still there. Still the bacon. We did that sometimes.
Okay.
And then,
bring home the bacon.
That's
one of my favorite games.
And then we'd line up. We took the tug of war rope, laid it across the field, and then on this side, all the guys' bunkhouses were lined up there, and they'd call them out one at a time. And then they would blow the whistle, and the girls would go out and chase a guy. If you caught him, you could marry him. So that's what we were going to do, was marry him. And, of course, the senior counselors, the red T-shirt girls, knew to look for the ones that weren't being chased.
Right.
Because that's the worst thing.
Yes.
And the only problem when we had a big problem was when there was a red T-shirt guy that wasn't getting chased.
Right. Yeah, it's like none of the kids want you, buddy.
Yeah.
And obviously, this was a time in history where kids were innocent. This was pre-social media. This was so much fun. It was just a kid game.
It was a total
It was
kid
so
thing.
silly. I remember being in third grade and thinking, this counselor girl's chasing me. This is so fun. I didn't realize there was a reason I got chased the first 4 years. It was because the counselors felt sorry for me. But it was so innocent. It was so fun, and you felt so special. And then it was sad when we had to move that out because just our culture changed and just the innocence was lost. And of course, it just anyway. It was just, I remember when Hetty said that to us, and we were like, oh, man, but it was so fun. And then you would get out there and do this ceremony.
Yeah, do the ceremony and, just made funny lines up, And you made like the woman was going to be the big cook and the big, you sat back and she did all the work.
Yes.
And, of course, the girls would boo you.
Oh, they would boo you.
Big time, you know.
It was all about getting crowd response, and the girls were fun.
Yeah. Exactly. Getting all the toe jam out of your toes. You'd have to pick that out because you'd need that for, biscuits in the morning, so.
That's right. Oh, yeah. It was the cringy,
Yeah, it was cringy. So it was a big spoof,
So
just having fun laughing about it. So, and then at some point we implemented the crucifixion.
Okay.
And that was such a powerful thing.
Yeah.
And we did it one summer, and we had a discussion, do we do it the next? And we're like, we're going to keep this thing rolling. We're not going to stop that. So powerful.
That is powerful. So do you remember what year that was that crucifixion
Man,
started?
I don't.
But you were camp director, assistant camp director, somewhere around there. So we're like,
No, I was definitely camp director. So
we're looking
early 80s.
Early 80s.
Yeah.
All right. There we go, Tyler. There's the trivia right there. Early 80s.
Yeah.
That starts, and I mean, I've never known us not to do it. So it's been a tradition ever since. And of course, it's one of the biggest things here now.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. We just had such a response to kids getting saved.
Yeah.
At that moment.
Did y'all do it up on Fun Swim Hill like we do now?
Yeah.
So that's where it started and where it's always been.
It's always been right there, as far as I know. Yeah.
Did y'all do live torches like we do?
Oh yeah, yeah. We did the
wow. I mean, that's the original.
Toilet paper and dip it in the diesel.
Yeah.
And on the little 2x2 sticks and carry them up. Yeah.
Yeah. We do the potato sacks now.
Okay.
Potato sacks, wrap those with the baling wire, and that lasts
I think
longer.
we used the potato sacks back then too, but we wrapped it, I think, around either that toilet paper or something like that. But yeah, to keep it going.
Yeah. That's incredible. It's so fun to know where that. Okay, so you said show night. What are some of the things that you guys had back then that we don't do anymore?
Well, we had every Friday night we had what was called show night. And so on show night, it would be each one of the bunkhouses would come up with some silly, funny skit, and they would all do that. And typically, whoever did one the first week, they carried that same one all summer. So they didn't change up, and they would have to own up to who was doing what. And there was some, bartering going on who wanted to do this one or that one. And so they would do that all summer long, every Friday night. And then at the end of that, we would do our graduation ceremony. But in the middle of it, I was like, being there year after year, you're just like, we need something else, because as a bunkhouse was getting ready and one was doing it, there was a lot of downtime. There was some lead downtime stuff that would happen there. So we started doing some entertainment in between that. And it started off, it was called Serious Contests. And what it was is that Ricky Allen, Robert Daniel, and myself would dress up, and we would do different things, and we'd come out in front of the stage, and the kids would try to make us laugh. So if we cracked up, then we were out, kind of thing.
Yep.
And so the disadvantage was Ricky Allen, because he was emceeing, and he didn't have time to do any changes or do anything.
Okay.
But Robert Daniel and I did. We would dress up in wild stuff, come out. And the funniest to me was Robert Daniel. He was so clever. He one time he came out as a Chinaman. He'd cut a horsetail hair off and had put it on there. He had a symbol from the drum set on his head. He had this cloth come in and this Oriental look, and he'd just come up there and stand. And if I caught him out of the corner of my eye coming, I'd almost start laughing.
Yeah.
Ricky was the easiest. He was done. He was out in seconds. We'd knock him out so quick. And there was another time Robert came out, and he had this camper tied to its back, strapped on it. He took the tug-of-war and wrapped around the guy was to his back, and he was sitting on there on his back. He came out, and it just, you could hardly not laugh.
Right.
Another time he came out in the theme of Jaws, the dun-dun, dun-dun. He had taken the bass and made the music, recorded it, and came out, and he had all the scuba gear on, the mask, the fins, the wetsuit, and he came out like that. So that was funny. And then it transitioned to some other things. I did Blues Brothers.
Yes.
I danced as Blues Brothers. I had Jay Nichols did that with me at camp, and then it moved over to with John and I. John did Pee Wee Herman. He did. So we did Jake and Pee Wee, and we did this little routine, and it was funny stuff.
Yeah. Creative.
Yeah.
That's what Hetty taught us how to be.
Yeah.
Be creative. You don't need all this stuff on the outside to make you fun on the inside.
Yeah.
You have it in there.
Yeah.
And y'all were just taking all these creative things.
Yeah.
And, that's what Tyler talks about. So, Tyler, anytime we look to change something, Tyler warns us. He's like, is that going to take away the counselors trying to be creative? And he said, because he's always, Tyler, he'll agree. He's always over there saying, you're taking away things that are creative, and that's what makes a counselor a counselor.
Yeah.
To hit the fire
Yeah.
of you got to be up there in front of the crowd coming up with that, entertaining them, and not flop. And you're going to flop.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn that didn't work, and you're learning to find this creativity in yourself you didn't know was there.
Yeah.
And so that's what you guys were.
Yeah. Yeah.
When did it go to Carnival Night?
Do
you remember? Was that right at when John, because John kind of said there was kind of the end of the 80s maybe, because I only knew Carnival and I got here in 89 as a third grader.
Okay. For Friday night.
Friday night. I never knew show night, and I was an 89 guy.
Yeah. So it had to have been after 87.
Okay.
So maybe it was the next year. I don't know.
88, somewhere in there.
Yeah, because we did Carnival Night, but we did it in the 2-week session.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because 2-week would have had more nights than the 1 week had, and we deal with the same thing today, where we have extra nights in the 2 week, and sometimes we shuffle those into the 1 week and put the one like our country night is not in the 1 week right now; it's in the 2 week.
Okay.
So we may switch them. We just
Well, and so for us in the 2 weeks things, there was several things that we did that you don't do now. Back in the day when I was in AC, we had a band come in on Saturday night, and the band would play, and that would be a big dress-up time for us to come and do and hang out. And
this was a real band, not y'all.
No, it wasn't us. It was a real band. It was Sounds of Joy.
Okay.
Was the band that kind of stuck with us.
Sure.
Russ Taff was in that. Bob Mace was in that.
Interesting. Russ Taff became big time.
Yeah.
Russ Taff, yeah.
Yeah, we gave him the platform to grow, so he didn't know. So, but anyway, it's so funny because Don would see these musicians that would come in, and they said, "Man, if he'd have to make a living with a hammer, he'd die." Don would look at him and say, "Why? He couldn't put a nail in anything." You know? So, but it was funny. But he got hold of God out here and just really developed some of that inside stuff, and it was good. So we'd have bands that would come on Saturday night, and that was a big deal. We had a couple different ones that came, and we ended that. I don't think as the camp director we had done it then.
Okay.
So it had ended by the time I got back in the 80s, early 80s. And of course, we had Olympics. You guys did that, so we did that. We had Camp Out, which was a great time. I loved that time with the guys, really establishing things. And as I grew as a man, I came back and said, hey, we got to teach these young people how to be men, because there are a lot of them that didn't have fathers, and a lot of them that they were learning how to be men in school and what they taught, locker room talk. And it's like, that's not what it is to be a man. That's just some kind of trophy hunting thing. And so we really dealt with that. And I did some things. I bought books that I would give out to the JCs and the counselors and read and say, hey, you need to impart this into your life so you can, teach your guys around you this stuff. So just, great, Courage was the name of one of the books that I did, Ed Cole. And it was just fire. It was fire for people, for young men. So we did that too. But, Camp Out, doing all that, dealing with the guys and having just a great fun time all the way around.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, we have this thing in staff training called the list, okay? And this thing has been created over many years of things that were done by the staff that you can't do.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Tim, in a lot of the list, we have no clue about because we didn't do these things. It was on there from the people before us. There was one on there where Tim said the staff, I don't know, 3 or 4 staff members got in a car, drove to Canada after camp ended, and then drove back before camp started on Monday. And all they did was drive, take a picture at the Canadian line, and drive back. They did nothing but drive the entire weekend, and they were exhausted. Of course, they were no good for the next session. So, of course, that was on the list. Don't drive to Canada and back. And, we're reading these just laughing like this is ridiculous. What were things that made the list? Rodney would talk about things at Serenade where there were pranks going on.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, we don't even have Serenade anymore. But when we did, we were being told these things in staff training. We were like, who would do this?
Yeah.
But this had to have happened.
Oh, wild stuff, man.
With you guys 11, 12 years into this thing, because that's still infancy, right? It's not 50 years where it's a little more, systematic, institutionalized now,
Yeah.
where back then it was green.
Yeah, it's green. You're learning.
Yeah.
You change. And I remember Het saying that it took 10 years for her to develop camp and
Interesting.
hit the stride.
Interesting.
It took 10 years
10 years.
to get to that
I've never
point.
heard that. Okay.
But, stuff like pranks, guys and girls. Benny Beck was the master of guy pranking the girls, and Meredith Sanders was the master of the girls.
Meredith was here this weekend.
Yeah, I know. And those guys were, mouses in the bunkhouses, just things to cause the guys to lose, cabin cleanup,
Okay.
and vice versa. We had one year, Benny Beck, who taught horseback, and he didn't always live and do out here. Some of the staff would come and do horseback, leading the activity. And so Benny did horses, and he came, and one time the wagon was going from the horseback down to the big lake, and Benny was in his car and had someone with him, and they had a whole thing of water balloons, and they were circling the wagon, throwing the water balloons at the kids. And the wagons are rolling.
Right.
And the kids didn't want to get hit.
Right.
And so they were trying to get up and jump off the wagon and stuff.
No.
Yeah. So that was kind of one of those probably on that list,
Was that frowned? Did that come up in a staff meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And,
now, would that have been something that Hetty caught?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Because she saw everything from the front porch.
Yeah.
And so we used to have an old phone system. It was like a cable that was buried from Mim and Pop's house all the way up to the pavilion.
Okay.
And it had one that went down to the barn or something like this. And you would pick it up, and there was 6 buttons on there, and you'd push where you wanted to talk, and it would buzz in that thing. And so if I'm up in the office upstairs, and if I heard that buzz going on, I knew something was happening. And it was usually, this is Gary, sweetie. Do you know what's going on down at Big Lake? Because there's some boats down there that are not back at the dock, and the wagon's waiting on them, honey. You may want to look into that. So anytime that buzzer happened, man, I knew something was going on.
So you get in the truck and you take off.
Take off, man. Take off, go down and see what was going on. The pranks would keep going, and we'd have to watch because, they'd pull stuff out of the bunkhouses and ruin and stuff. And so I remember one time I had a camper leaving early on Friday night. So we were having show night and stuff was going on, and it was in one of the bunkhouses. I think it was the Mustangs or Walkers, the front ones there. And they had come to pick up their kid, went back to the bunkhouse, and then they got me. They said, we got a little problem. So I go back there.
Those are the worst things you can hear right there.
Yeah. I go back there, and on top of the bunkhouse was their chest, sleeping bags, bunks were up on the bunkhouse.
No.
Clothes, everything.
No.
And it happened to be this kid's bunkhouse.
No.
That he was
And the parents drive up.
Parents drive up, and the stuff was up on top of the bunkhouse.
No.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was bad. That was bad.
That made the list.
Yeah.
So that is on the list today. Of you don't put anything on top of the bunkhouse. That's on the list. I say no bunks, no kids, no stuff. And, of course, everybody looks at me. They look at us, Tyler, like we're ridiculous. And I'm like, it's on the list, guys. And if it's on the list, it means it's been done.
It's been done.
So there is where it is. I'm going to tell them to go to the podcast and hear the explanation for that one.
Yeah, we did that. And then there was the outside the bunkhouse prayer meetings.
Right?
So
we talk about that. That still kind of tries to happen.
Yeah,
those resurface because it's a Jesus camp. I mean, people want, and it's like we love that, but then they're no good for the rest of the time, guys.
No, they've been up till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning talking about Jesus, and the next day they can't keep their eyes open. Watch go-karts,
Right. Song of or Ecclesiastes. Nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
Nothing new under the sun. That's it.
Yeah. Then they would always try to sneak out and go back to the kitchen and get Pop-Tarts.
Okay.
Yeah. I had one time when the guys were camping out down there that after the kids got to bed, they walked all the way up from down there and got to the kitchen, got Pop-Tarts, and took them all the way back down. So that was another On the list.
That's on the
Guys,
list.
it's on the
Okay, I
list.
think I heard a story, and I can't remember if it was you. Monty Manser was a JC or AC.
He was an AC.
Was that when
AC,
you were
JC.
here?
Yep.
Okay.
I know. Tennis court.
Okay, there was a party. There was going to be an AC or JC party, and someone asks you if you're going to it,
Well,
right? All right,
so-
tell us this story.
So we had a guy that was staying with us. I think his name was Chase.
He was in the house.
He was in Het's house. He was in the house. And so he was green. He didn't know about all the process. And after the JCs got done cleaning up at the pavilion, we send them back. And so we shut things down, just a couple last things, make sure everything's tidy, good. And we're just John and I start walking out. And Chase says, "Hey, are you guys going to the party?" And Sean and I go, "Well, yeah, we're going."
Yeah.
We're going. And so we walk up the hill to the tennis court. At that time, we took the right road, which we wouldn't have done. We'd gone down the left road. But since the party was on, we go up the right road, and we go up there, and here's all the council JCs that were at there. And it just gets quiet because they hear us walking up there, and they're just like ghost, man. And then from the back of it, Monty said, "Well, I'm sure glad Monty didn't come to this."
This is Emma's dad.
Yeah.
He tried to play like he wasn't there.
But it broke the ice,
That's
man.
so Monty.
It really did.
That's so Monty, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so good seeing Monty, man. He
Oh,
hugged every
man.
time I walked past him Saturday night. He gave me a hug. He said, "Man, I got to get one more in." And
That's
I just
awesome.
loved it, So good.
Here's what was cool about the other night, and we all said this. No matter who you were either seeing your hero, seeing your best friends, or you were being the hero to someone underneath you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care where you sat in the room. The only people may have been the little kids.
Yeah.
But everybody else, I don't care if you were Tyler, Brandon, me, you, everyone other than Hetty or the youngest kids in there
Yeah.
were seeing their heroes, their best friends. What a picture
Yeah.
of discipleship.
Yeah. And some of those I hadn't seen 30 years
That's
since I left camp. But just seeing them brought back all those connections, all the memories. And it was like for Ricky and I, we hadn't seen each other in forever. We just hugged, man. Just all of them. So many of them that I hadn't seen, I just hugged and just loved on. And it just because we had that common bond together that we were at war together for kids. Yeah.
So what is it? What is it, Gary? Let's try and what is it for camp? Why are camps? And it's not just Brookhill, right? Camps make a difference in kids' lives. And you've worked at multiple camps, right? What is it that kids need, right? Because I know for me, Brookhill was it.
Yeah.
It was what I needed at that time.
Yes.
What is it? I'm sure you've thought about this.
Well, it's for me, it's the same because camp did so much for me. And I do a camp in Colorado, and I've been doing it since 1999. It's just a 1 week. I got church kids coming.
What are the age group?
12 through 18
Okay.
is what I deal with.
Okay.
And whether they're in church group or their aunt or grandma sent them, said, "Hey, my kid needs help," we open our arms. And what we do is we love kids unconditionally. And that's what Brookhill is that loving kids unconditionally and just paying attention to them. We taught the counselors how to engage in a conversation with a kid. Don't ask them yes and no questions because that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get a conversation. Ask things that will probe into who they are and what's going on. And pretty soon they find out you're interested in their life more than just, my name. And one of the things that impacts is that they don't know how much you're noticing them. And I remember at graduation one year, Pat Morris was graduating, and I got to her, and at that time, you don't wear a name tag on that Friday night because, you're dressed up, and we'd let them not wear it. And so I'd go down and pray for the kids and speak words and stuff over. And I came and I called her by her name, Pat. And she couldn't believe I knew her name out of all the kids at camp. And it's just like, we notice you. And that's what makes a difference, is that the staff notice you, and it's genuine. It is. And so when you get past that, so many kids, their parents don't even notice them in their home. They're just so busy, so worked, so stretched. They come home and they're just wore out. And the kid wants to come and have a conversation. And it's just like, I got to cook dinner, let's talk later or something. And they're just overlooked, and they never get to that place of having that connection with your kids. Every kid wants that. Every kid wants that from day one. They don't stop wanting that. They stop asking for it.
Wow.
And that's the sad place.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's so good. You know, Simon and I were talking about this when we did our podcast, is someone saying their name validates you.
Mm-hmm.
You're a person. You're not a number. You're not a group.
Yeah.
You're an individual. And you said Pat Moores. Now, is there any relationship to Mike Moores?
Brother, sister, Mike, Jennifer.
Buckskins,
and Pat.
1989.
Yeah.
He was my senior counselor.
Yeah, they were here for a while.
He was
Yeah.
Simon's senior counselor
Wow.
in 1989. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but anyway, validation. I think it's so true. Unconditional love at camp. You're not in a box because I don't know who you are at school.
Yeah.
I don't know what the youth group thinks of you.
You
I
could
don't
be
know.
the star athlete at Brookhill. We don't care.
Yeah, you know, it's a funny story. I had a parent say that we favored the popular kids. We favor everyone, number one.
Yeah.
We don't know who's popular.
Yeah.
We're not from that environment.
Yeah.
We love everybody unconditionally, and it's like that's a back home thing.
Yeah.
Here, but that makes sense. You know, school puts me in a box. Maybe my home puts me in a box.
Yeah.
Maybe I even put myself in a box.
Sure. We absolutely do that.
But I go to a camp
yeah.
and I get to be whoever they, you know,
Yeah.
really probably my more authentic self,
Yeah.
right?
Right. And a lot of times we have the name tag was very important. Taught us that.
Yes.
And like you said, they want to know their name. It's not like, hey, you with the face.
Right.
We want to, it's you. Hey, David, and engage with that person. But so much is true in that kids write on their heart who they think they are. And that comes from our siblings, it comes from our parents, it comes from teachers, it comes from all different things. And what we got to do is to write on their heart what Jesus says about them.
So good.
And that will totally change their life. And that's what happened to me when I started seeing myself as Jesus saw me. It changed who I was. I rewrote some things.
When Hetty said you were, remember when she would say you used to be that?
Yes.
You know, maybe you used to be dumb or
Yeah.
you used to be,
That's
cut
not
from the
who you
team.
are anymore.
That's not
honey.
who you are,
Yeah.
honey.
Yeah.
Remember, I mean, that was so powerful. And at Brookhill, or at least around Hetty, you believed I can be what the Bible says I can be.
Yeah.
She would call that greatness out of you.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's incredible.
Well, she could see in you what you couldn't see in yourself. And I remember when I first started in the 80s doing the devotions, I'd never spoke to groups.
Right.
I didn't know how to do
I'm not worthy to do this.
No, I wasn't a public speaker, and I had such tunnel vision. And just to keep my thoughts going, I had to look past the kids, and Het would be in the back. And after it was all over and the kids were back, she'd start talking to me. I said, now, what was going on with these kids over here? And what was going on over here? And she would ask me those things, and she would start to show me that you got to make that connection with your audience and it's okay, relax, you can do this. And that's how I developed that, and I grew with that. So, but it was that teaching, seeing the kids, being able to speak into
She would do the lasso. Y'all have heard her say the lasso,
Mm-hmm.
where she would lasso the crowd. And she's like, I lasso them and I draw them in when I'm speaking. I'll never forget that example.
Yeah.
That's so good.
And interesting that you would have by the end we had 260 kids coming and another 60 staff. So, but at the first day, within 30 minutes, the two that were like personalities, oddballs, would find themselves in 30 minutes. And, they would attract to each other. And she'd know, what the groups and who she needed to speak to. And she handled a lot of things in orientation that helped us be successful as staff, as red T-shirts.
It's so true, and if you get them on Monday,
Yeah.
the rest of the week is over. And she would always say, we're dealing with on Friday what guys we should have taken care of on Monday. Yes. I mean, she was the ultimate setup queen.
Yeah.
Everything is what you set it up to be.
Yeah.
Lack of setup
Yeah.
or a good setup.
Yeah.
And I use that in coaching. I use that in teaching. I use that in staff. I mean, you use that. I mean, that's just gold.
Yeah.
It just works.
It's principle that works. It really
it.
is. And Het taught us how to see everything. Because she could come down, she'd park at the ball field or by her house now, and she would walk down and she could tell you 10 things she saw.
Wow.
That we needed to be working on. What's going on? The red T-shirts that were together, kids off by themselves, balls down the hill, just all those things. And she'd come in. And by the time she parked her car and got to the pavilion, she had 10 kids around her following her in because they had that connection with her already.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What bunkhouses did we have then? You said about 12 bunkhouses. Can you remember?
Gosh. Well, I know we had
what were the originals?
The Walkers, the Buckskins.
Mustangs for sure.
Yeah. Appaloosas, Morgans, and, man.
Were the Broncos there?
Yeah. Broncos was a new one with me.
So that was a new one with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we built that in there.
So was it maybe 6 and 6 to start?
I think it was. They had the Pintos, Lipizans, all those.
Palominos.
Yeah.
Pintos, Lipizans, Palominos, Thoroughbreds.
Yep.
And then maybe there was Arabians and Galicinos.
Yes.
Because those were the original small ones that we built onto.
And then when we built ALI out here, we built
the pavilion cabins.
3 cabins up here.
Okay.
I think it was Roans, the Chestnuts, and Percherons, maybe.
Yes, and maybe Bays. Maybe
Bays.
not. I don't know. That one got built on later on.
But the Bays was part of when I was still there at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got added on. It's so fun for people to hear their bunkhouses and what it was when this one came about. And so that's incredible. So who was it? Just the last few. I don't want to take too much more of your time here, but who were some of the last? Who were the counselors in that mid '80s? Who were your people, guys and girls?
Well,
who were here 3 or 4, 5 summers, whatever.
Well, we talked about Ricky Allen.
Yep.
John Thomas was there.
Yep.
We had Alfie and Stephanie Gibson, sisters that were there. We had the Sanders sisters that were there. Mostly for me was Kim and Meredith and Sherry, the younger one, and then Little Rock, the Moores family, kids. Shannon Jacuzzi, Russ Berryhill was there. Let's see. Gosh. Man, what's that?
Wilcox?
Yeah,
Kevin Wilcox
was there.
Okay. All right.
Kevin Wilcox.
Because I just don't hear as much about the 80s crew. And so, I know the 90s crew.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to, continue to learn all these names.
Brian Cato was in there.
Was he like a camper?
He was camper AC
okay.
Towards the end for me. Drew Powell was part of that. But he was all an AC the time.
Bird? Mark Bird? Was he? No, that was just after. Okay.
He must have been after me.
Angela's brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
What a fun group.
Oh, it's great.
What a fun group.
In the summertime, when we'd have a week off, a bunch of those would go. They used to go to Destin, Florida, and spend the week, the counselors, and then come back.
That's fun.
And go to next. Because then it transitioned from, we did 3 1 weeks, 2 week off.
Yes.
2 week, and then 2 1 weeks.
Okay.
And that was the end of my era of us doing that. We did that several years.
Okay.
Yeah. It was very cool.
I love that.
The guys were laughing about, in the last year I was here, we all loaded up in my motorhome and drove to California to go surfing.
No way.
We did. We loaded up, and they say now that was the stupidest idea. We came. It was like Canada. We came back.
Right.
We were so tired, man. We were so tired.
Yeah.
But we had a blast.
But you had a lot of fun together.
Yeah.
All right, last thing is this. What did Brookhill mean to you? Well, if we could kind of wrap this up, what did it mean to you?
Well, a couple of things. Personally, it transformed me from a boy to a man.
Wow.
and I learned what being a man was.
Wow.
And not only was it part working with Don Brooks and that drive and that stamina to keep going, but it also was with Het the vision of who we are and what we have in God and believing in ourselves and other people and transferring that. And so for me, it was a growing up phase, big time. And then the other part is that all the things, the lessons I learned, I could take those with me. They were portable lessons that I could take and raise a family and be friends with people and to be in a church and to contribute to other places and not having to be on the spotlight. I didn't care if I was in the spotlight or not. And I've done a lot of roles where I wasn't that, but I supported those that were. And I just gave to that because you're not always have that opportunity to be that, but you can be a support for someone else. Go home and do that and not just think you have to be in the limelight. So that, kind of a nutshell, some things
Man, it's
that
so
I've taken,
good.
and I've done. My camp that I do in Colorado, 25 years now. I
25.
did 25 years. I did 5 years in England. I did it South Africa, and I did 4 years in Brazil. So we took our camp and took it around. We made it portable.
Wow.
But a lot of those principles that I do at camp, I learned right here.
Come on.
Well,
that's what Hetty said. You remember what she always said?
Yep.
Build your own Brookhill.
Yep.
That's what it's all about.
She didn't have one.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
But is that not what Jesus told us to do?
Yeah.
Go out.
Yeah.
Go out. Look, we're not building this for right here. Go out.
Yeah.
Right? That's the Great Commission.
Yeah, that is. And I love that. I said it's not just a legacy, but it's a perpetual legacy.
Yes.
Is what she is.
So good.
What we have here at Brookhill.
Right.
Because I hadn't been here in how many, what is it?
21, I think you said.
Well, back, I quit 87 was the last year. So I'm talking about 30-something years I hadn't been here.
Right.
And yet the product that's being produced, the end result is the same.
Wow.
It's lives being changed.
Wow.
It's a perpetual legacy.
Wow.
And I love that.
So good, Gary. Man, thanks for taking the time to be here.
Absolutely.
When you were in town for the Legacy Dinner, I was like, we got it. Who can I get that I might have trouble getting who's not quite in the neighborhood in Colorado? So anyway, thanks for being here, Gary.
Man, what an honor. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Loved seeing what you guys have done to the place,
Thank
and I
you.
love to see the legacy that keeps going on.
That's right.
And the importance of the red T-shirt
That's
and loving kids,
That's
changing lives.
Life, Legacy, and Leadership with the
Amen.
Gary Perry. Thank you so
Amen.
much.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, David.
See you later.